a meeting. I'm here now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live and welcome to the recess meeting of Tuesday, January the 16th. I'll call the meeting to order. We will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Alderman Vaughn will give us our invocation and then we'll have a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Most holy, all wise, all knowing, all powerful, all seeing, all hearing, all understanding God. Our God, our Father, and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Again, we just thank you so much just for allowing us to be clothed in our right mind with the activity of our limbs and the use of all our organs. But most of all, we thank you for just seeing fit to let these golden moments of ours to roll on a little while longer. Thank you for the way you have protected this city from the storm. We give all praise and honor and glory to you, God, because of who you are and what you are. Now we just ask you, Father God, these few hand select that you allowed this citizen to vote for, to elect us to handle these affairs of the city. We ask you again now that you will please be with us. But God, that every decision that we make, it will glorify you. That we will take every decision and put it in our heart. That we'll be concerned about every citizen, every neighborhood, every situation that comes before us. That we will do it and do it all in the name of Jesus. We ask you now that you will fill this place with your spirit. But most of all, Father God, that you don't leave us, don't depart from us. Just keep your spirit and your love among us, God, that we all can do the right thing. We glorify you, we magnify you, we honor you because of all who you are and what you are. But most of all, we thank you for our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, our big brother, our Redeemer, our salvation. Your only begotten lovely Son that was born of a Virgin Mary. Joseph was his earthly father, who you allowed to be crucified, died, and buried. But in 3 days you raised him from the dead. He sit at the right hand of you, making intercession for all sinners and the rest like us. Thank you for giving us all the chance to live again. When this life is over, if we accept you as our personal Savior. Thank you for abundant life you allow us to live while we're on this earth. God, we thank you for your Son dying for the sins and the sickness of the world. But most of all, dying that we all can have eternal life when this life is over. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, thank you all for coming out and braving the weather. We will move now to approval of the official agenda. First with consent agenda items, do we have any changes to the consent agenda?
Mayor, may I be recognized?
Alderman Miller?
Yes, I'd like to move under Section G, Human Resources, Item 5, to consent agenda.
Okay, all right. Any objection to item 5 being moved to the consent agenda? Hearing no objection? Oh, I'm sorry.
I've got
Alderman
one item.
Okay, all right, well, we'll have item 5 moved to the consent agenda under Human Resources, and Alderman Miller, did you have anything else?
That was all.
Okay, Alderman Little?
Under board business, item B.
Okay.
I'm not sure, is Johnny here?
Representative for Mr. Moore?
Is he here?
No, I'm not seeing
I'm
anyone.
not sure if he was coming or not. Edward, I've got a motion that Chris had worked with Alderman Sistrunk on earlier today. One of the conditions is mentioned is Fairway Drive and, or Sandwich Drive, rather. Was that part of the original deal? I mean, that has nothing to do with what they were trying to do over there.
Not to accept the bridge. Sandwich is the road.
Where's Fairway?
Fairway goes, yeah, Sandwich goes north, correct, a little close to that.
I guess it's to kind of clean it up. I had seen the motion, but that would be my assumption.
Were you wanting to put that on consent, Alderman Little?
No, I'm not sure I want to put it on at all.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay, you want to pull it from the agenda?
Well, he's not here, and I don't think he's comfortable with this.
May I be recognized, Mayor?
Um,
When he gets finished, when he yields,
yeah.
when he yields?
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Gentleman from 3, you don't like the wording of the motion?
Well, I think the applicant has some issues with it, and
Well, I think we need to have council.
I think with that, that's enough to say we're going to pull it.
That'd be a good idea. So to the next meeting, let council be here and let him weigh in on the legal aspect of it.
Okay, so you would like to have item B pulled,
Yes.
board business item B pulled from the agenda?
Yes.
No objections? All right, we will pull that one and bring it back at the next meeting,
And
postpone it to the next meeting.
may I say, I had talked with the developer, and part of this was new to me too, but I had talked with the developer, and there was some interest in getting this approved so that he could finalize some contracts related to the bridge. And I don't know, he's not here to
No.
answer
He's
those
not here, and I
questions.
just took a picture and shot it to him 10-15 minutes ago, and
Okay.
he's got an issue with a couple of conditions.
Well, the easiest and cleanest to just pull it then.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that would be the safest.
All right, we
thing to do.
will consider that pulled from the agenda. And by the way, I meant to tell you, Chris is with us in telephone spirit, so he's available to us if we need him. He's on the phone, so Mr. Latimer is. All right, sorry, Chris. Did you want to say something?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, if you would, I would recommend January 2nd, those minutes be pulled. Lisa did a great job of trying to get ahead of the game and get those going, but they're not quite ready yet. So I would recommend a motion be made to strike those from the agenda.
Okay, so the January minutes are not ready for consideration, so no objection from the board. We will pull those from the consent agenda.
Mayor, may we recognize?
Vice Mayor?
Mayor, would you move the Second Baptist Church update until after citizens' comments? I mentioned to Mr. Harrison that I would get him out. I think he may have another obligation. After the citizen comments, just move just the Second Baptist Church update after citizens' comments.
Yes, sir, I'll be
Thank
happy
you,
to do
thank
that.
you.
No objection from the board, we'll be happy to do that. So just remind me when I get
Yes,
to
ma'am.
that.
Yes,
Make sure I
ma'am.
don't
Yes,
skip
ma'am.
over
Yes,
it.
ma'am.
So, okay, anyone else with any other concerns, or, I'm sorry, any other comments or changes?
Well, while we're moving Second Baptist up, move Antioch up as well.
That'll be fine. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
all right, we'll just take, under code enforcement, we'll take both those items and move them above citizen comments, so. And I'll make a note here. Okay, all right, any other amendments or changes to the consent agenda or to the agenda? All right, seeing none, I have a motion for accepting the agenda with the consent agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion for Alderman Little, second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Miller. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. That takes us to, we have announcements and comments. I have no comments at this point in time unless somebody needs me to say something that I don't recall I should have said. So, okay, Board of Aldermen, do we have any comments? Alderman Vaughn.
Thank y'all for a great day. We had a great day on yesterday because we spent most of the day together. So we really had, Mayor, you and I, we had a long day.
We did. It was a wonderful day, though.
Patrick, we had a great day at the breakfast. Great speech, great speaker. Great words of encouragement to all the people that were there.
And we
It
were
fed a lot of
graced with
people.
nice weather, too, weren't
Nice
we?
weather. Nice
It was a very good march. I would love to see us have a bigger turnout for the march next year.
Me-
Perhaps we can manage that. Vice Mayor, I'm
I
sorry.
guess that Alderman Vaughn's comments kind of forced me to make some comments. I don't want everybody to think I was just sitting at home yesterday.
No, you were there. You were at the march.
No, let me speak. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. You're so gracious. Thank you. I did not join you and the others yesterday because I was the keynote speaker at the Dr. King events in Macon, Knoxville County, Mississippi, but I did join you and the others before the conclusion of the Unity gathering at the Unity Park yesterday. So since the gentleman from 7 had raised it and specifically named the alderman, I want the viewers and the listeners just to think that the vice mayor was just totally absent yesterday.
You
So
didn't blow us off, did you?
no. I just thought I'd get that public service announcement in. Thank you.
Absolutely,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Well,
Thank you.
and the ceremony at Unity Park was very nice.
Well, it was. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen from 7. Thank you all of you.
And thank you, Alderman Vaughn, for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Okay. If there's nothing further, then we will go to the thing that we, no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I need to read the consent agenda. My apologies. I know you were gonna get me, weren't you, Alderman Vaughn?
I was going to
Okay. Consent agenda items would be, I'll read them now. For the record, consideration of the minutes of the December 19th, 2017 meeting of the mayor and the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville. Consideration of the minutes of the December 29th, 2017 meeting of the mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville. Under mayor's business, we have consideration of an engineering proposal from Neil Schaefer, Inc. to prepare bid documents, plans, and specs to host a public bid opening for partial closure of cell number 5 at the city's rubbish site. B is a resolution of the mayor and the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville urging the Mississippi Legislature to allow municipalities to submit debts owed to the municipalities and to the state of Mississippi as a result of delinquent municipal court fines and fees to the Mississippi Department of Revenue for collection through a set-off against state income tax refunds owed to the debtor. Let's see, under planning, consideration of final plat 18-01 Walmart Commercial Subdivision final plat approval for subdividing plus or minus 7.58 acre parcel into 2 lots located at Highway 12 and Market Street in a C2 zone with the parcel number 117F-00-008.08. And B is consideration of approval with condition that the special events request for the 2018 Frostbite Half Marathon and Super Bowl with in-kind services. Under Finance Administration is request acceptance of the December 2017 financial statement. Fire Department, 1 is request permission to allow Starkville Fire Department to apply for an FM Global Fire Prevention Grant to be used to purchase a fire inspection prevention program and laptops. 2 is request authorization to declare 3 vehicles surplus and sell on govdeals.com, a 1932 Seagrave fire truck, fire prevention, museum trailer, and 1986 Ford Ranger. Under Human Resources, number 1, request authorization to hire Parker Medine as entry-level police officer in the Starkville Police Department. Number 2 is request authorization to advertise for a facilities and grounds supervisor in the Starkville Park and Recreation Department. 4 is authorization to advertise for an administrative assistant in the Starkville Park and Recreation Department.
3 is added to consent.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed 3 as being added to consent, I apologize. Number 5 was added to
It was
consent.
5.
Okay. You're messing with me.
Tell it 3.
Broke my flow here. Number 5 is request authorization to rescind the motion adopted by the Board of Aldermen on August the 15th of 2000. Under Parks, number 1 is request approval of the new Starkville Parks and Recreation Contractor Agreement. Number 2 is request authorization to apply for a National Recreation and Park Association NRPA Disney Play Spaces grant through the Meet Me at the Park program to renovate the existing playground facility at J.L. King Park, and authorization to move forward with the project if awarded. And under Police Department, number 1 is request authorization to allow dispatcher Erica Ratliff to attend the Emergency Telecommunicator Basic Course, which will be held in Philadelphia, Mississippi from February the 5th through the 9th, 2018, at a total cost not to exceed $1,074.92. Okay, and now we'll go back. Under Planning, we have an update on the Antioch Baptist Church, 522 East Gillespie Street, and the compliance update, and then the Second Baptist Church at 314 Yates Street compliance update. Mr. Sanders, would you like to start with the Second Baptist?
Sure. Second Baptist Church is now fully in compliance, and Antioch Baptist is very close to being in full compliance. A little bit of siding and a little bit of paint, and they will be done, and I fully expect that to take place within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, when the weather allows them to get the paint in there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And I have pictures if the board
Okay.
needs to see them.
No?
Mayor, may I recognize?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Mr. Hairston, will you come down, please? Mr. Hairston, how are you doing today?
Just fine.
Yeah, back on at our meeting on the 7th day of November 2017, we call you down as chairperson of the trustee board and inform you about the Second Baptist Church property being out of compliance with our city ordinances, codes, and regulations. And since, I specifically asked you to come down, I certainly want to take this great privileged moment and opportunity to commend you for your exemplary work in getting this property all cleaned up. I want to thank you for getting it in full compliance. I've been by the property a number of times. I saw the property as they were cleaning it up. They got all the construction materials. They didn't bury any, to my observation and recollection. They brought the red dirt in, and then they brought the hay in and the seeding in, and You got the construction trailer in and just look 1,000,000% better. So I want to thank you and your members of your board of trustees. I certainly would like you to take this message back to your pastor, the Reverend Stone, your current sitting pastor. And I want you to personally tell him that the vice mayor and whoever else joined in to say that you did an excellent job. I know you have a hard job down there, but I want you to get out in this inclement weather tonight, because we had talked before this meeting about your being here, because it's very important to me that you be recognized. You and your board of trustees need to be recognized, and I hope that people from the newspaper just give some recognition to this group from Second Baptist, because they've had to endure a whole lot in trying to get this property cleaned up. Yes, and y'all did a great thing. People don't know the story; they don't see the glory. So you've had to endure a lot down there, and the vice mayor is I've been at this a long time, so I know what's going on. Yes, sir. And that's why I took this moment, this time, this privilege, and this opportunity, because you deserve the thank you and your who you have with you tonight back there.
Trustee Marvin Perkins.
Right, Mr. Perkins. Marvin, we appreciate you and the Second Baptist board of trustees, and you be sure to tell them on Sunday. No telling when y'all may have another meeting, but let them know that that we are pleased and as we clearly stated that the bylaws at your church state that the trustees is in charge of the property. Is that right, Mr. Harris?
That's correct.
And that's your obligation. If you're allowed to fulfill your role, then more things will get done.
Yes, sir.
So you are to be highly commended, and we appreciate you. So I tell you, a job well done, Mr. Harris. Just keep up the great work. God is going to continue to bless you, because you are a servant of God. So you keep doing that, and the church is going to get better. We have good God people like yourself doing the right things that's good for the church and the community, and not only make Second Baptist look good down there, but y'all making the city of Starkville look good. That was our overall intent. And you understand that, right, Mr. Harrison?
Sir.
That was our overall intent. And now I think everybody at Second Baptist should just be smiling at this project, because it benefited not only Second Baptist and Mr. Sanders. We want to thank you for your hard work and your leadership, Mr. Sanders, and your complete staff, and everybody who was involved, including this Board of Aldermen, for voting to make it happen. So the mayor and all this whole board, made it happen. So it passed, and we just want to thank you. And I told you I would get you in and out, and I just want to just make sure. I told the mayor I would ask the mayor, could I bring this up tonight, and she told me, yes, I can get this moved up, and just thank you. And I want you to get out this cold weather, and so just go and stay warm, whatever you need to do. But I just want to thank you so much and appreciate you, and you let them other trustees, give them a call tonight and tell them how much the mayor and all of us appreciate you and the whole board of trustees. Okay, Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Thank you so much, and have a good night
Thank
here.
you, sir.
Thank
It does
you.
look very
Thank you.
nice, and thank you for taking care of it.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. All right, any other questions from the board on either Antioch or Second Baptist issue? Okay, thank you. All right, that will take us to our public hearing, which is the first public.
Your citizen comment.
Oh, gracious, okay. I was thinking, come on, citizen.
comments tonight, but I got one.
This is the second time I've skipped right over citizen comment.
No, that's okay. My name is Chris Taylor, Ward 7. Alderman Henry Vaughn is my alderman. First, I want to give thanks to the Lord for having us such a beautiful weather. As you look at the weather today and the weather Sunday, you wouldn't believe that he let us have 50-something degrees temperature, which was great. Now, I want to thank Chief Nichols and his folks. His patrolmen. They protected us during the march, because this world is crazy, and any fool could have drove down that intersection or through them intersection, ran right over us, but they didn't. And then I want to continue on with the mayor. The mayor's right up front with me. Alderman Vaughn's right there with us, and Vice Mayor showed up. He said he was late, but come on, Vice Mayor always there. Sometimes he might be a little late, but he shows up. And also we had elected officials from the county, Landa Traynor, who's the president, Marvell Howard, and Joe Williams. We had some elected officials. Oh yeah, I forgot about our judge, Marty Hart. Marty Haig was there. And I expect the whole citizen, this town, to come out next year. We need to make this bigger and better. Unity, folks. The current administration the world is going crazy as hell. It's crazy. But we got to come together as one and show them, especially here in Starksville. We're looking good, and let's keep it that way. Thank you, Mayor. and I always like your support.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Appreciate it. All right, any other citizens' comments? Okay, seeing none. Now we'll go to the first public hearing on the proposed ordinance change to allow the increased use of EFS as a construction material under certain circumstances. And this came forward, Ms. Sistrunk, Alderman Sistrunk had asked that we bring this one forward for a first public hearing. We normally do 2 public hearings before we do an ordinance change. And in this case, Mr. Sanders, I believe, did some research on it. Does the board want to have Mr. Sanders present his research at this point in time, or would we like to go into public?
I've read it, Mayor. I mean, I don't need to hear from us.
Okay, all right. Well, let's see. Does anyone else want to see a presentation from Mr. Sanders at this point? No? You may be off the hook. Let's hold our first public hearing. Okay, we have, generally we will have 15 minutes on either side, a pro or a con side. And so I will open it to those who are interested in talking about it. We will start a clock, and you have 15 minutes to talk in favor or 15 minutes to talk against. So I will open it to the in favor side. And Mr. Castleberry, you're welcome to come up if you just identify yourself.
Certainly. My name is Mark Castleberry. Wish to speak, do we speak in favor of the proposed? I kept on going an ordinance, but I guess it's not. It's a
Ordinance change.
ordinance change. My understanding is that, of course, with the forming of an architectural review committee, it kind of kicks the can down as to where the details will be developed. And so I guess I'm going to, on a cold night, I'll blow some hot air and as to some concerns or some issues on that. The technology changes in construction just like it does in everything else in your life. This Starkville seems to have a love affair with stucco. Stucco is a product I had on a home of mine. It was a masonry home. I used to actually own concrete plants and have some knowledge of cementitious materials. I used to have some cards in my billfold about testing, about how I was qualified as a testing agent in several areas. Stucco really was never designed to be on wood frame construction. If you know, wood frame construction is peculiar to the U.S. And I've taken several photographs how the Cotton District specifically and even the new gin project across the way from us are riddled with cracking. And so that's what stucco does. It's not cementitious materials have a low flexural strength. They don't take movement well, they crack. When you have cracks, you have water intrusion. Water intrusion's bad. And whereas EFS is a newer technology, and whereas many technologies started off, it had problems, no question, absolutely big problems. But if one took that same mentality, then you would also never see, you see the white plastic roofings, or the white roofing materials that are very prevalent and used, that's called TPO. Those had problems and were not used many times. Now it's probably almost the standard of the industry. You would not be seeing PVC pipe being used. When PVC pipe was first introduced, the materials to attach them together, the cements and things were not adequate, and they failed. Now, nobody thinks twice about it. It's the best plumbing material there is available. You would not see PEX pipe, which is the newer generation of plumbing pipe. Again, a new technology. Fiberglass shingles, when they came out, had problems. But again, standard of the industry, nobody questions it. So I ask you to take a mentality to not, to look at where technology is taking us to, and to not hold on to things for dear old reasons, or I'm not quite sure what. But to adopt new technologies, and again, do it wisely. I would always be against being an early adopter, but we're talking about a product that's been around 20 years. I would also ask that you refer to, when you're looking at writing these standards for the Architectural Review Committee, to look at sources of information such as the International Building Code, which I know at least the 2015, and I just didn't have time to look and see if it's in the 2012, does address EFS and its use. And I think going to sources of information such as that is much better than what my neighbor likes or what I like. You know, I think none of us, but please take that not insultingly, but I don't think any of us have put ourselves forward as experts in building materials or experts in, how to build a waterproof structure for an exterior finish. So I would ask that you do look to good information when you make the decisions, be it EFS, be it whatever the material is. Again, not peculiar to that. There's a gentleman came here with Ryan McKay, who is very knowledgeable about EFS, and he actually has some displays to show you the old bad stuff and the new good stuff. And when I say new, we're still talking 20 years new. This is not really all that new of a material, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Castleberry.
Hello, my name's Ryan Upton. Here with Mark Alvis. We brought two samples. One, older generation EIFS, was used primarily in the 90s. The newer generation crossed over early to mid 2000s. A little history on the product. It was
Reed, you want, can't see, you can't see below, so do a little show and tell here if he's going to be talking about it.
a little history. EIFS was born in Europe after World War II. They needed a lightweight, product to use to rebuild the country, war torn, obviously. It was brought here in late 60s, early 70s. Of course, the one on the right would be the old generation.
The one on the far, over here, our left.
Your left, my
Okay.
right, yes
Okay.
ma'am. That would be the old generation. If you notice, it has no drainage plane. Here would be drainage plane. There's no drainage plane here. The orange would be the waterproofing that encapsulates plywood. So basically, the problems that occurred on the East Coast, everybody knows about them, I'm assuming. You had no drainage material, no waterproofing. You were putting this material directly over mostly plywood. It's not actually the material itself that failed in most cases. The actual cladding remained waterproof. It is where the system met windows, doors, flashing at roofs, anywhere there's a dissimilar connection where water could get in. And when water did get in, of course, there was no waterproofing to protect the wood. So it sits there for X amount of time. You don't see it because the outside cladding holds up. You don't see it until it's really bad and wood starts peeling off. Of course, everybody knows about the 90s, and since then, they've come out with several different waterproofing products. The one on your right, our left, is that correct?
That one over there?
Yes.
Okay,
This
the newer one. Okay.
That would be the newer one. As I say, the orange is the waterproofing that encapsulates the wood. Everything is glue-on, so you don't have penetrations through the plywood. Obviously, anytime you put a screw in plywood, you left the hole there. If water gets in, it has a chance to go through the hole. As you do in cement plaster. Cement plaster has thousands of penetrations because you have to mechanically fasten metal lath. So also, primarily with cement plaster, you would use 2 layers of felt paper or a Tyvek type material, which is paper basically. It's not a liquid applied, so it doesn't self-seal the penetration. So that's basically the major differences between old and new. A lot of the problems in the 90s was just from flat out poor contracting. Most of it was on residential houses. You didn't see much on commercial. And that's because, as you still do today, residential contractors don't care as much. They want to hurry up, get done, get paid. Whereas commercial contractors, you have architects involved, contractors that care and want to do a good job.
Is that the finish? The last part that we see, would that be the finish? Okay.
This is the finish.
Just making sure there wasn't some
Yes,
other
ma'am.
layer.
Of course,
there.
it could be any color or
Sure.
texture,
Sure.
So, I don't know how much time I've got left, but I would like to answer any questions that any
About
alderman.
7 minutes.
Yes. Would you know, just from your general knowledge, Are there comparable cities to Starkville from a planning standpoint, ordinance standpoint, that, and maybe Buddy can answer this too, but that are using EFIS, or that are, it's just kind of a diffusion of policy that's other jurisdictions are using?
I don't know of any city that has a ordinance against EVES except for, I believe it's Warner Robins, Georgia, I believe.
That's against it?
That's against EVES. It's the only
Okay.
city that I know of. I'm not saying there may be more,
Right.
but it's the only one that I know of.
You mean
That
it's
is-
in its entirety as opposed to in pieces?
In its entirety,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay.
And I don't know the answer why.
All right. Anything further? Anyone else?
Any other questions?
Buddy, do you know that same
Are we gonna-
same
are we gonna-
question? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, could we just,
Excuse me, ma'am.
let's just get out of the public hearing phase of
That's
this if we
fine,
can,
yeah.
and then we'll let Buddy answer questions if that's okay.
That's
All right?
Just from my only comments from a professional standpoint.
And who are you?
I'm sorry, Reed Nelson.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mayor.
That's okay.
Ford Alderman. Just from a professional standpoint, Ryan is one of our company's only contractors that does this, does a really great job at it. And our client, Mark Custer House, asked us to come up and try to help better understand this product. And just from a corporate standpoint, from a professional standpoint, we try to steer our clients like Mark away from the stucco system, not because of what Ryan said, because as a general contractor, as a professional, we have license and insurance and we're liable for leaks and mold and things that we don't want to happen. So we're much more favorable to this system than we are stucco. We're obviously going to use this one anymore, just because it protects the building so much more. And it's come a long way. It's a very professional system. It's something we prefer, but it also has to do with the proper people installing the system. So we're very pro this system, EVES or EVES, whatever you want to call it. It's a good system. It's tried and true, and it's been really successful for us in the past 10 years.
Okay. All right, let's get out of the public hearing part of this.
Well, I actually have a question for them if there's.
Okay, that's all right, if you want to ask them.
Could you give us, since you've apparently used this in the area, could you give us some recent buildings maybe that have been used with this?
Marriott Courtyard at the mill has some brick and some use of this, not this. I can set this down. I'm not using that. That was just for example. But yeah, the Marriott Courtyard uses this on campus.
Zeta, the Zeta House on
Zeta
campus.
Alpha, we just expanded that with Ryan's help. Their entire facility, we just expanded up the size of it. This matched perfectly. This system, I don't know, we didn't build the original, I don't know if they had this or this system, but it matched perfectly. You can ride by there. What do you know it's going to add on to, unless it was added on to God. So, the soccer building on campus is breaking. Had some of this, in some places. Most of the hotels here in town, we weren't a builder of. You'll see those. In most cities, you'll see a brick and an EVES combination. It's an architectural effect, but it's a tried and true system. It really is.
Thank you.
Yes, I think it's a good question.
All right.
No more questions?
Yes?
Thank you,
Okay.
Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Thank y'all.
Anyone else wish to speak to this matter?
If I could make one additional question. I understand about your question about municipalities. I think if you could also look at corporations that have a vested interest on the cost and the maintenance of their buildings and the safety of the people using it. I would also ask you to kind of look into that, because such as Hilton Corporation, such as Marriott Corporation, such as probably any retailer, if you look into their specifications, EVES is definitely an allowed, if not a preferred material.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this matter? Anyone else? Okay, we will close it as under the pro side. Anyone wishing to speak against the use of EVES or EVES? I'm not sure how to do it now. Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay. Seeing no one, we will close it as a public hearing. And now, Mr. Miller, if you would like to inquire of Mr. Sanders?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
Yeah, is that something you're seeing, Buddy, just from your, and again, this is just, if you have general knowledge from maybe other cities you've studied, or if you're looking at EFIS, that you've kind of seen the spreading, that cities are using it more or allowing it, or they haven't allowed it in the past, or they've always allowed it? Can you speak to that?
It's a mixture.
Okay.
For example, Oxford, Mississippi, their ordinance is very similar to ours. We allow EFS to be used in accents, such as caps, columns. In Oxford, Mississippi, they allowed for 2% of the facade to be EFS. In Auburn, there is a list of materials that is allowed in their gateway and corridors. If you want to vary from that, that is possibly allowed, but in EFS being not on that list, it goes before the Planning and Zoning Commission. If the Planning and Zoning Commission okays the use of that material, then a building permit is allowed. In Fayetteville, Arkansas, they allow EFS to be used throughout the city, with the exception of the downtown areas in which EFS cannot be used on the first floor, but can be used on the second and third floors of the structure. In Clemson, South Carolina, they have various architectural review districts in which are mainly centered around neighborhoods. And stucco and EFS is allowed, but no more than 20% of the facade can be made up of that material. And of course, it has to go before Architectural Review Committee for approval.
That's stucco and EFS?
Stucco and EFS.
Okay.
In Tuscaloosa, Alabama, it just depends. As far as zoning districts that pertain specifically to EFS, in a mixed-use district, 25% of the trim and other elements are allowed. In mixed-use district, also 25%. In a riverfront district, 15% of the facade is allowed along public right-of-way. And in the university area neighborhood district, 25% of the trim and other areas are allowed. So it's a mixture with these.
Right.
But any product has the capability of being abused. A case in point, cement fiber composite board.
Hardy board.
We allow that. I've gotten some calls about a new development in town that people feel that it's being used too much. And this proposed development, you know, in my personal opinion, it looks good. But it looks good maybe in the warehouse district of Seattle as opposed to near downtown Starkville. So EFS has a certain look. If you allow too much of it, it might possibly be abused. So that's where the Architectural Review Committee comes in, and that me and my staff are not architects. What looks good on paper can often look different when it's actually applied in the real world. So if the board chooses to allow the expanded use of EFS, me and my staff recommend an Architectural Review Committee.
Well, aren't we recommending an architectural review committee for any?
I'm sorry?
I thought that one of the things we were looking at was an architectural review committee for the city,
Period.
not just for selected materials.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
But it
Sorry,
would be
just
up
make
to
sure
that,
we were clear.
to that committee to decide if too much of one material is being used.
Okay. But not that we have a prohibited material, just as the use and the quantity of use, style and quantity of use.
That's
essentially.
correct. But there would still be some, for example, corrugated metal materials would not be a suggested material for me and my staff.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions, Alderman?
No, thank you, buddy.
Okay. Yes, Alderman Walker?
I was just going to say that I agree that I think that in most cases when a material has some type of failure is generally the contractor's fault, Reed. Because all materials have the capacity to fail. If they're done right, they can be done well. I personally don't have an issue with EFS as a product. I think it is a product that is used quite often. We have very good success with it. My concern is with any material that looking at the context for me is really important, and that's the reason I didn't support the variance ultimately, was that it's across the street from a building that's on the National Register of Historic Places. And this material, while it is new technology, it is a synthetic type of product. And because of that location is why I chose to use a real material. And I think that's important. I think context and what is surrounding is important when you're making material choices for how that's going to be. And I would hope that that would be something that, as whatever this code that gets readopted for looking at architectural review takes those things into account, because context does matter. If we want Starkville to look different than Columbus, or if we want it to look different than West Point or any of the communities listed here, context is a driver of that. If you don't, you get the same. Where you see this used most often is what he said. You see it on hotels, you see it on banks, you see it on a lot of things that you would see at the highway interchange, along in materials that can be done really well. But if we want our community to be our community and be a special place, context needs to be a driving force in that. And I think it can be. I do think this is an acceptable building material. I think we have cord metal as an accepted building material if it's done well. And so you got to have architectural review, and I'm quite hopeful that if the city staff presents a plan for how the architectural review committee will actually work and sets out that framework, that we will get a much more consistent product throughout our community.
Alderman Little?
I'm anxious to see where the architectural review component takes us. I'm not so sure how the committee or what sort of makeup we're talking about going with, and I'd like for you to keep us posted on what your thoughts are on how we need to best address that. I understand you're not an architect and we don't have one on staff, but I think they could also give us input on the code rewrite as far as maybe percentages of materials that might be reasonable, as some of the other cities are using. I think EIFS is a viable material as well. I know the Courtyard Marriott looks very well when you pass by and look at the end results there. I do have some concerns that Alderman Sistrunk mentioned. I believe the Hardy Board and the usage of it, it's kind of been, we've got certain areas of town, it's become the developer's material of choice. And if it's too much of it, it becomes not really a good looking end product, in my opinion. And I'm sure there's probably several others that will agree, and I've had several comments, and I'm not going to continue berating the one that I've off Russell Street. But everyone knows where it's at, because you just, when you pass by, it kind of jumps out at you. And that's what we're trying to get away from. And I know whatever Mr. Castleberry's project, whatever he usually works on is usually a fine end result. And I appreciate all the work that you've done and for our city, and continue to look forward to relocating over here when you get moved. But we really need to start driving this forward. We're going through a tremendous growth period here in Starkville, and this is our opportunity to control what it looks like as it's built out. And we had this come up a couple of years ago with the metal buildings and the facade ordinance. That was a quick Band-Aid fix, but we really need to delve deeper into it now and come up with something long-term that gets us to where we need to be as far as aesthetics.
Thank you, Alderman Sistrunk, did you have something you want to say?
I'm just agreeing tremendously.
I saw you nodding your head. Make sure you give it a chance. Anyone else have anything they'd like to say? I want to say for a couple of things. And number one is we are not under the 2015 International Building Code, but we are under the 2012. And 2012 does allow EIFS as a product in it. And so I'm not sure, I wasn't privy to, nor was I anything other than an audience member when we made the change to disallowing EIFS. I'm not quite sure how that comports with us having 2012 building material with EIFS allowed as the International Building Code, but I want to make sure that we reconcile those things, that if it's an allowed building material, and then our IBC, or we ought to amend our IBC acceptance appropriately. In my case, I think we ought to keep EIFS. I think it ought to be a building material that's allowed, and then the architectural review then determines whatever that project is to how much of it is allowed, just like anything else. Because if we're going to limit something, I'd really be more glad to limit the Hardy Board. I'm with you guys on that one. I don't find that to be the most attractive building material. But one of the things that I would like to see us do, usually when we call for a public hearing on a change of an ordinance, we have two public hearings, and this one is listed as the first. The building department, the community development department is ready to come forward with sections 1 and sections 2 of the code rewrite. And included in that, we can add to it the architectural review element. So I would like to see us perhaps rescind the next public hearing on EFS and call for a public hearing on the first and second sections of the code rewrite, if the board is so inclined. And so I would like to ask y'all to consider that as a possibility. Alderman Sistrunk.
Can you tell me what sort of time difference there would be? Would they track roughly the same time frame as far as getting something approved and done?
Well, it would certainly push beyond the next meeting to get something approved, but
Right.
you know, the EFS element would have the next board meeting for a second public hearing, and then you could adopt. But the next one, if we were to change that structure, it would push it 2 meetings, obviously. So you'd call for your first public hearing on adopting the code sections 1 and 2. Is that right? Sections 1 and 2, is that how they're
Section
labeled?
1 and 2, and also please keep in mind that it has to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission, which
Right.
is also a public hearing.
Right.
So that would
That would be your first public hearing, then you could have your second public hearing with the board. So if we wanted to push it,
Mayor,
well, we could. Just a moment, Vice Mayor. Yeah, we would still have 2 just because that's our standard practice, but you do have the requirement of 2. So that would be us and P and Z. Yes, Vice Mayor.
I have the floor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mayor, I don't have any objections to this substance that's being proposed. The reason I'm asking for recognition here is that I think it's very important that we remain consistent with the process. I'm not against the proposed change to allow this EFS, but it's very important that we be consistent in that we keep the 2 public hearing process, because once you start deviating from this 2 public hearing process, you have to deal with this later on down the road. So I think it's very incumbent upon us that we just not have 1 public hearing and adopt this.
Oh, no.
Maybe you were unclear.
I wasn't clear. All I meant was to withdraw from this public hearing, not to have another one, but to change, instead just rescind that action and say we're not going to do it. We're not going to change this ordinance. We're going to go through this other process and then do that.
Okay, we have, all right, this public hearing says on the proposed ordinance change. So in other words, since we have the public hearing, I'm not talking about withdrawing. What's the urgency and the rush and the justification, if any, to not have the second public hearing at our next meeting on February the 6th like we do with all other public hearings? Only thing I'm asking is, and I'm not against this, all I want to do is be consistent and follow the process, because when I'm consistent, I'm treating everybody who's similarly situated similarly, and then nobody can call my hand on it down the road. But if I avoid this next process, then my hand gonna get called, and everybody else gonna get called, whether they agree with it or not. So let's just stay with the process. I'm not against this. But it's incumbent that we stay the process, because when you start getting away from the process, you're treating people differently. And this is nothing. This is all about business. Mr. Casper, I have no objection to this, and to everybody else assembled here. I just want to stay with the process. We just have another public hearing. We're going to be back on February the 6th. Whether if it's snowing, we'll be back. And we just put this on the agenda for approval, code rewrite, whatever we want to do, we'll do it. But please do not abandon the process. We got to be consistent. When we get consistent, we get good results. Just like with the Walmart. When Walmart wanted $1.3 million, we were consistent. We didn't give them a handout. We didn't give them a subsidy. But that wasn't a public hearing. But I'm speaking for the consistency. So I just wanted to continue to say that long enough. Hopefully, we'll just stay that. Please don't push away from that, because we got to be consistent, Mayor. And you're doing a great job with your leadership, but we must be consistent. I yield, Mayor.
Okay. Well, I am not being clear, obviously, because I wasn't saying not have a second public hearing if we were going to continue down this path. But this path has to do with only EFS. And so I was thinking that if we would bring the concept of EFS into that Section 1 and Section 2 of the architectural review. But that's entirely up to the board, because y'all are the ones that called for the two public hearings. So I'm not trying to deviate from that, Vice Mayor. I'm just was trying to see if there was another alternative to go that same route but add more to it. So, Alderman Little.
That was my understanding too, that we were changing directions, and thus we weren't going to have the second, because there was going to be no action on EFS, and it was going to be folded into the phase 1 and 2 of the code rewrite. Is that correct?
That was my intent, but again,
And it would be
that's
addressed
strictly up
for
to
that,
the
and then we
board.
would still have two additional
Yes.
public hearings.
Yes.
So this one would just basically die on the vine, because it's not going anywhere anyway.
If
It's not gonna be
that's the
action.
board's desire, and that's all I was trying to say. And I absolutely agree with the Vice Mayor. I want us to be consistent in our holding of two public hearings. But if we're not going to take this matter up as it's listed on the agenda, then I would say that it would be up to the board to then say, no, we won't go forward with it in this form. We will do it by folding it into something else.
That was my understanding.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Alderman Miller.
So just to be clear, so this would fold into two more public hearings, and so they would still have their time and to kind of go off the vice mayor, but they still have their time to speak their mind and
Oh,
within those
absolutely.
public hearings and say for or against it, and so we're not preventing anybody from their time
No.
within
no,
the public hearing.
No. Chris, are you, Mr. Latimer, are you?
I am.
Okay.
I am. That's a good summary by Alderman Miller. And let me just say, Mayor, that it's neat that I can hear you guys crystal clear, and I'm also watching the Facebook live stream, which adds an extra element to it. And Joel and his staff are doing a great job on the camera, so I'm seeing you guys as you talk, which makes me feel like I'm there. But just to give you context from my standpoint, this started out with just a public hearing on EFS. So there was no talk about code rewrites. There was no talk about architectural review. I understand from talking to staff that once they got into this, they thought perhaps it's best to handle those things globally rather than piecemeal. So that's the mayor's idea about folding this EFS discussion into architectural review and into code sections 1 and 2 of the code rewrite, and having that be a global change rather than just a piecemeal change. So Alderman Miller said it well, that EFS would get 2 more airings as part of the 2 public hearings for the code rewrite and the architectural committee. So, but the board has discretion either way. If it wanted to proceed with a second EFS hearing, I would just advise that the ordinance only deal with EFS and not mention the architectural review or the code rewrite.
Mayor, may I recognize?
Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Mr. Attorney, you did a very good job in explaining that, and the gentleman from Five, I had to give him some credit for it too. Mr. Latimer, can you hear me?
I can.
Just to summarize it in my own words, is that what you're saying is that if we do not have a second additional hearing or another hearing on the EFS, when we have the code rewrite, and when that public hearing is called, we will also put some specific emphasis on the subject matter of EFS. Is that what you're telling us?
That's right, and you would have 2 public hearings on that. That's correct.
Right. So when we get to the code rewrite, so in other words, it just won't be labeled EFS, but when we get to the second public hearing for the code rewrite, those who want to speak for, against, or indifferent, as however the mayor may label it, will have an opportunity to speak to the EFS issue or matter at that time, correct?
Correct.
So if that's the case, then with that clarity, then we will be consistent. And of course, it wasn't that clear to the vice mayor until we got this further explanation. So we are then, going to allow it at the next meeting for a public hearing on the subject matter of code rewrite. But during that public hearing for code rewrite, you can also just specifically mention the subject matter EFS. So that would be inclusive. That is satisfactory. So thank you for being on the line here, and thank you for that explanation and clarity, lawyer. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. And I'm sorry to be less than clear, Vice Mayor.
That's okay, Mayor. We got it straight now. We're ready to roll on. We're good.
All right, okay. Miss Alderman Sistrum.
Mate, I think that there may be only one person here tonight who has an interest in this from a personal perspective, and if there's any additional comments as we move from Plan 1 to Plan 2 here, Do you want to make any additional comments?
Mr. Castleberry? Are you asking him, Alderman
Yes.
Sistrunk? Yes, certainly.
I wish to, one thing I wish to comment on Alderman Walker's comment about context of properties. And again, maybe to emphasize or to go back to my comment about going back to sources of information, that empirical sources. The Courtyard Hotel there at the mill at MSU was proposed in EFIS by Dale Partnership, probably one of the most best historic architects in the state. It was approved by the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. It was then further went through a National Park Service Part 1, 2, and 3 process with the National Park Service of that hotel with EFIS applied to it directly adjacent to the mill. So Dale Partners, the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, and the National Park Service all believed it was an appropriate material to be adjacent to the mill at MSU. Second of all, it sounds like with the direction of this, it's going to be delayed further. Is that correct? Is what I'm hearing for another meeting schedule for the potential of using it. So we're toast as far as the 550 development's concerned. I guess that's the impact.
I thought that ship had sailed anyway. I'm sorry.
Well, we're just trying to figure out if we could, and we were trying to work our schedule and what our delay would be. But it sounds like I'm toast.
Well, it sounds like this would take about 2 weeks more than the path that we were on already.
It's already passed, but.
Mr. Castleberry,
Yes.
is that going to be beyond your?
Yes. Yeah. We're dead. We're stuck with stucco. What we're going to have to do and dealing with the cracks and the problems of having forced use of antiquated material.
Mayor, I'd like to offer a motion.
Alderman Little, you are certainly welcome to do so.
I move that we allow Mr. Castleberry's 550 project to move forward with the EFIS as outlined previously in his design to go forward with his project.
Okay, I have a motion that Mr. Castleberry be allowed to use EFIS. That would be part of that variance that he had asked for prior to.
Yes.
I have a motion that he be allowed to use that. Are we out of order on this, Chris, at all in terms of bringing something back?
No, I think the proper motion would be to rescind the previous board action and allow the variance. So as long as that wording is in place, I think procedurally the board would be covered.
Okay, Mr. Little, is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion to rescind the previous board action and to allow Mr. Castleberry to use EFIS as the material on the 550 project. Okay, do I have a second to that?
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Sistrunk. Further discussion? Anyone? All right. Tell you what, let's do a roll call on this one. If you will answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name, please.
Alderman Sistrunk.
Yay.
Alderman Little.
Yay.
Alderman Walker.
Nay.
Alderman Miller.
Nay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Nay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
We have a tie vote. Well, in that case, I will vote in favor of the allowance of the use of EFIS for Mr. Castleberry's 550 project. So, and that being stated, the motion carries by a vote of 4-3. Okay? All right. Let's see. Now, to take up the remaining matter, we can do that under the Unified Development Code update, which Mr. Sanders is here to give us. But what we're talking about and what we need to think about is if we want to call for a public hearing to bring forward the sections 1 and 2 to include architectural review, and EFIS would be included in that as well. So that would be for y'all to consider that while Mr. Sanders gives us a Unified Code update. How about that? Okay, and that came at the request of Alderman Miller at the last one. So, Mr. Sanders?
I would like to begin with first stating that the city planner and the assistant city planner have worked very diligently over the past 2.5, 3 months, working forward with the Starkville Unified Development Code, looking over the draft. And we've had some setbacks back in November with many special call meetings and also a heavy workload. But they have pushed forward. In sections 1 and 2, 4 sections are about probably 90 to 95% complete. And as the mayor stated, sections 1 and 2, it's staff's recommendation that we move them forward with the facade changes to be incorporated as part of that ordinance change. Section 3, zoning, subdivisions, and standards, is essentially the meat and potatoes of the Unified Development Code. Currently, that is 196 pages. Staff is working on Section 3, but it's going to take them probably a good anywhere from 2 to 4 months just to fully chew on and get a product out of Section 3. In Section 4, we've done a good bit of work in the beginning back in October with definitions. It will not take as long as, of course, Section 3, but it's going to take some time to do Section 3.
Is there a chance, Mr. Sanders, that it would be sped along if we were to find someone who is adept at Section 3 to assist Mr. Hamlin and Ms. Corbin?
They might need some aids along the way, but I think what they really just need is some time. And I've been deflecting calls, site visits, certain work duties to me so that they could have the additional time to work and focus on the development code.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see as we go along if that continues to be the case, or if we can help in any way. So, okay, Vice Mayor.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sanders mentioned that one of the sections, at least 196 pages, and what I'm respectfully requesting that this does not be dumped in our lap on a Friday before the board meeting. This is extremely too important.
Yes.
We need to get this in time enough so we can dissect this. We can read every word, every line, every sentence, every paragraph, every page, because we want to give the full meaning, because once this get in place, it's going to be here for years and years to come. So, Mayor, if you would just, please, ma'am, ensure that we get this in ample time. We don't want this given to us on a Friday evening or a Thursday evening at 4 o'clock, and we're going to consider it on a Tuesday. So he mentioned it's going to take about another several months, so it won't take them that long. We need to, a good bit of time so we can dissect it and analyze it and interpret it, because this is very important, because this is going to be the law of the municipality.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, may I be recognized?
Yes, just a minute. Vice Mayor.
Yes, I yield.
I completely and totally agree with you. In fact, staff and I met and discussed essentially multiple of community meetings for this. And if there's one thing that I don't like is a surprise, and I reassure the board that you would not receive a surprise from the community development on Section 3.
Yes, absolutely. We will have multiple opportunities, I think, to see this and hopefully provide some input further. So I'm looking forward to it, but it is going to be a process. So thank you, Vice Mayor, for that.
Thank you.
Alderman Little.
What are your initial thoughts on the design review component, on how we go about that?
Me and my staff's conversations is, one, we don't want to hold back anything. We don't want it to go before a consultant or a body only like one time a month. That consultant or that body meets as needed. And essentially, when an applicant submits something for review, that body or that consultant has maybe 5 or 7 days to review it and give a response back. That is our biggest thing. And one, we wanted to, most importantly, we want the new building to fit well into the community and the neighborhood in which it will be constructed, because it will be there for a while. But two, we don't want to slow anything down. And we want things to be clear and concise, but also we want to give the consultant flexibility to make the best decisions possible based upon the character of the neighborhood.
When you say consultant, are you referring to an architect?
Architect, or either a body made up of an architect, a historical architect, and some type of urban professional like a landscape architect.
Okay. I'd be hesitant to just take a lay committee or something like that, as we've had on some of the other committees, for something this important. I like the architectural component, and an architect being involved for sure. But it would need to be somebody that is familiar with Starkville and not just, you know what I'm saying, different, you know, different sections of the town and the look. So,
And that's where a committee would come in to play very well, in that you could have someone local, but you could also bring someone, that's maybe, just an example, maybe an architect from Tuscaloosa who's familiar, who's within driving distance of Starkville, but doesn't have any projects here, so there's no conflict. But there's many ways that we could get there. It's just what the board is comfortable doing.
obviously, there'd be fees associated with using consultants. Is that something that would be passed on through the development process?
Yes, sir. For example, the city of Brandon, they have an architectural consultant that's an architect. And I believe the gentleman's rate is $150 an hour, and that is generally passed on to the applicant at the rate of generally around, it doesn't take generally longer than an hour. So it's generally $150 to $200.
I think this is going to help us in some of the pitfalls we've been experiencing with the end products that we haven't been as happy as we thought. For those renderings, what I have found from my time here, the renderings and drawings that we see don't always look like the finished product, and far from it on occasion. So,
Well, it's similar to the building I mentioned earlier in the warehouse district of Seattle. It would fit right in and do so beautifully. And I'm not saying it's a bad looking structure, it's just in the neighborhood that it's currently in, it just, something else would look probably more appropriate.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The only thing that I want to make sure we don't do is add another layer of time and another layer of red tape, if you will, for want of a better expression. So we need to have something that runs consecutively with something else, and we need to make sure we have a timeline that doesn't exceed what we would normally expect to have happen. So those would be my concerns associated with that. So, okay, Alderman Miller.
I know there's a lot of discussion about the Architectural Review Board, but is there anything else that we'll see out of 1 and 2 that maybe we're not talking about? Or I know the, you know,
1 and
review and
2,
design is the big topic,
yeah,
but
there's essentially, there's no real big changes to 2 that isn't already in our zoning code as far as path with the Board of Aldermen, the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, their process essentially being reviewed by them on for recommendation. One thing that we are trying to unify is essentially, for example, the term either use by exception or conditional use. Just have one term throughout the entire ordinance. As far as an appeal period, it'd be the same for a decision from the Planning and Zoning Commission as it would be for the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. So I'm not having to give 3 or 4 different answers and trying to think about what commission is 5
Right.
days and which one is 10 and which one is 15.
right. Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anything further, anyone? This would be at a time if we were going to make a motion to have the public hearing on the architectural review, well, to be incorporated into bringing forward sections 1 and 2 of the code rewrite. This would be an appropriate time to make that motion if we're so inclined.
I'll move, Mayor.
Okay, I have a motion from Alderman Miller. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Little. Let's see if I can phrase that properly. We'll move to have a first the public hearing on the code rewrite sections 1 and 2 to incorporate in that architectural review and the use of architectural materials, building materials.
I don't think you have to say any of that.
You don't have to say any of that? Okay, just architectural
You can
review.
ask Chris, but I think if you say this is going to be updated status and public hearing for adoption of introduction and section 2 bodies and procedures.
Okay, I'm just not remembering exactly what was in bodies and procedures, but okay. Chris, any thoughts on that?
No, I like the way Alderman Walker just phrased it, and it would be incumbent upon that EFS and architectural review will be addressed in those sections.
Okay,
That's
all
the
right.
intent, correct, buddy?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. All right, thank you. Then I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, let's see. Next item is under the Finance Administration. We have claims docket. Do we have a motion for acceptance?
So moved.
Motion from Alderman Walker, a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Sistrunk. Any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion carries.
2 nays.
Yes, I'm sorry, Alderman Vaughn and Vice Mayor Perkins.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes, acknowledged. Okay, we have one other item under HR, which is,
Move approval, Mayor.
I have a motion for approval from
Second.
Vice Mayor, a second from Alderman Miller. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, and one last item under utilities, which is the authorization for purchase under state contract or better, a new Ford F-350XL for the electric division. Do we have any questions or concerns?
I have a question, Mayor.
Vice Mayor, you have the floor.
Mr. Kemp, would you come down? I just want a brief question. For what purpose would we need a truck this size for?
I think this truck actually will be part of the fleet that will be supporting our line crews. What we need is a vehicle that's capable of carrying material, supplies, insulators, stuff like that in support of that crew. And we have found that a small pickup just is not heavy enough to be able to have vans and stuff to support it. So that's what we're looking for. It's more of a, I guess you'd say it's kind of like a service truck, but it's to be used as a part of the line crew to carry supplies out with them while they're doing maintenance on the lines.
Let me say, Mr. Kemp, this is probably going to pass. Let me tell you why I asked you this question. My attention got called to this as to the size of the truck. I know there's one other truck this size in the city inventory, to my recollection. And the reason I think that the board approved this truck, specifically this truck came up during the last administration under the former director of Sanitation Environmental Services. And at the night we approved this, there were some issues of a missing truck, which we have not found yet, among other trucks in that department. And the board, there was a plea to the board to approve a truck of this size. And I've seen that truck since. It just seemed like that's the most, inefficient use of taxpayers' money for a truck that size. It just occupies most of the street, in my opinion. It just does not have the image of a work associated with it. Not to say that your department will not. And it's get past. And I'm not trying to make you feel uncomfortable about it, but I just have a real problem with this size of truck. I've seen the one that's in the other department, and I just was not familiar with trucks. I'm not in the market where I just know trucks. I didn't know the numbers got higher than 150. I'm just that old school. So that's all I had, a 150. But when you get to 350, I tell you, it just gives me great discomfort. And don't take it personal, but it's going to pass. But I just, when I saw the size 350, when people come to work, you don't need to take a size 350 to get in to do work. You just get a regular pickup truck and let's get out in that work. They're not going to be in the truck. I mean, it's just too modern for me. Everybody want to get a big, nice truck they can ride around in and got a radio and CD player and just want good air conditioning. Just get a basic truck, park it, get out, get your gloves on, and work. What you say, gentlemen? Okay, but that's just my take on it. But you got it budgeted. The board going to probably approve. But I have to say what I have to say. Okay, but thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor.
Are you replacing the vehicle?
The truck that we've been trying to use is a 2005. It's a pickup, and it's just
150?
not heavy enough.
Is it 150, 250?
It's a small. It's basically
Regular
we're
pickup.
trying to pick up.
It's a
and it's
350.
got almost 180,000 miles on it, and right now it's become a maintenance problem. So we looked back at our fleet, decided how we would want to do that. So we're going to get away from that light pickup to something that's a little bit heavier.
So this
And
would be
that's
the-
what we wanted to go to a short wheelbase. Back to that point, a short wheelbase, extended cab, something that's capable of supporting.
And this 350 is going to be the one-ton dually, right?
It's 1-ton single.
Single. It's not a dually. Okay.
But you're carrying really heavy things in it. Is that the thought? I don't mean the people. I mean the
That's right.
equipment.
What you would do is want to equip it with capabilities of vans, like on our service trucks.
Oh, bins. Okay, I got you.
Well,
Like carrying
I'm gonna-
things.
I'm gonna defer to you.
Materials and supplies, so that you'll go out there and you don't have to run a line truck back and forth. Basically, you've got a smaller vehicle that you kind of carry.
It sounds like you've got one that's been under capacity, and this will give you the capacity that you need to haul and without making multiple trips, and
I feel
it'd
like.
be more efficient for your department. So with that, I move approval.
And this one, I'd say too, one problem we've had is we need some that's capable of getting off-road a little bit, so we wanted to go with four-wheel drive. That was the benefit of that one. Storm restoration, things like that, it's kind of looking ahead, just kind of have capabilities.
Okay, I have a motion from Alderman Little. Alderman Miller, did you have something you wanted?
Yeah,
Make a second?
Well, I'll second, and then if I could be recognized.
Yes, you were recognized for discussion.
Thank you. I feel as though with just if you're going to use it for what you're saying you're going to use it for, if we said we're going to get a 150 and you're using it for the weight you're using it for, and then we just tear it up using that amount of weight, I can see where the 350 is needed, so I'll support it.
Okay, all right, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Alderman Sistrum?
I just wanted to say that being able to eliminate those trips back and forth actually makes this a little more efficient, so
It does, and I'm hoping, like you said earlier, along those, we're looking at something that we can get a lot of use out for a long period of time too, and take care of it, so.
Okay, all right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
All right, Vice Mayor is a nay vote, so we have by a vote of 5-1, motion carries. All right, and that brings us to the closed determination session.
Move on to closed session.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to go into the closed determination session to determine if we have a need for executive session. If you would clear the room, please. And while we were waiting for room to be cleared, we are going to, Joel has posted it, we're going to have another day like today.